Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode. So Gustav's coming at the beginning of April, which gives me a couple of weeks to do some small jobs to Alice here. So I think I've sorted the exhaust out to a point where I'm fairly happy with it. One of the things that I want to do that I know a lot of people have mentioned to me before is that there is a noise from the engine. Now, this has been apparent before and it sounds like a tapping noise. Now, people have told me that I need to set the tappets on it, but I do know when I broke the camshaft and refitted the camshaft, I did change all the followers and sort that out. So I'm not really sure that it has to do with the top end. Now, what my thoughts are at the moment is it's probably the bottom end. And when I say the bottom end, what I think it is the windage tray. So what you might have seen in one of my previous videos is that I actually fitted a windage tray. Now, I didn't use the bolts that you can buy to do this job because they're pretty much impossible to find over here. And at the time I couldn't find them in England. So what I did was I welded some new bolts to the bottom of the original bolts. It's all good and well, it works, the windage tray is in place and it does what it should. The only thing I think may be a slight problem is that I might have tightened it up slightly too high, and I think the crankshaft is touching it, and that's what's giving me this tapping noise. So what I want to do today is to get the exhaust manifold off and then get the sump out of the way, and then be able to have a look at the windage tray. So I'm going to start by draining the oil first to see if I can see anything obvious in the oil. Now, I did change the oil not long ago and I thought I saw some metal particles in the oil. That could just be me, I don't know, but we're going to have a look now. If that's what it is, then I think it's coming from the windage tray. So I'm going to start by draining the oil and seeing how that looks before we go any further. So while I'm under here, there are still a couple of jobs that I want to do. Now, one of them is here. So I don't know if you can see it, but there is an oil leak and it's gearbox oil. I've been trying to find out where it's coming from, and I think it looks like it's coming from here because this is wet still. So I think I'm leaking gearbox oil out of that little plug there. So I want to drain the oil off the gearbox and replace that seal there. So that's one of the jobs. The other job I want to do is behind there. When I fitted the gearbox and the engine, I didn't put a plate in between there, a sandwich plate, and I want to do that before the trip to England. So when I get all this down, I want to replace that sandwich plate that's in there as well. In fact, I need to make a new one because I don't have one. So I want to make a new sandwich plate on there as well. I also want to take out for the cross member because it gets a bit difficult to get this sump out of the way. So I'm going to take a little bit more out of that tray and probably re-powder coat it. So we're going to start off by draining the engine oil off and seeing if we can see anything in the oil as it's draining. Well, I don't think I can see any metal in there as yet. That does just look like clean oil. So I don't see any metal in the oil. It looks like clean oil, really. So I think I'm going to get the manifold off and then we'll start to pull the sump down and see if we can find anything in there. Okay, so the cross member's out of the way. The exhaust is off, the manifold is loose, it's not off completely because I can't quite remember how you get it out of there. It's pretty tight up there. So I can't quite remember how you get the manifold out of there, and I don't think it's in the way, so I'm going to leave it there. So all I've got left to do now is all the M8 13mm bolts around here and then pull the sump down, and we'll have a look inside it and see what's going on in there. Here you can see the sandwich plate that I want to make because there's nothing covering the clutch up, so driving around Europe we'll probably get water and stones and dead squirrels or whatever else into there, and I don't really want that, so I'm going to make a plate that covers up this hole here as well. And then this bracket here, there's not enough room there to drop the sump down, so I'm going to need to take more out of this part of the cradle here. But I can do that once I've got the sump out of the way, find out what the problem is, and as I'm putting it back together again, I'll sort this bracket out as well. And then it's going to need, obviously it's going to need repowder coating. Can't leave it like that, can I? Right, so that's the sump off. That looks like spots of metal, but it's not. But looking at the oil pan, as the oil runs here, it looks like there might be something in the bottom of there that's left, and it looks like a really fine paste. So it looks to me like a really fine paste that's definitely metallic-y. So whatever it is catching, but very slightly, and it's kind of wearing down into this paste. So I think I'm gonna have to get the windage tray down now and have a look what the problem is. I can't see any lumps or chunks or anything like that that's come off of the windage tray. What will be interesting is when I undo these bolts here, these ones, what is on top of this windage tray. And now I guess that the crank, probably one of these, is just touching this plate very slightly and wearing it down, and that's where the like paste is coming from. So I can probably adjust this or just lower these bolts down slightly, and that should give me the clearance that I need to not make it rattle anymore. So with the windage tray off, I think, if the camera can pick it up, that we may have found one of the culprits, which is there. And on the gearbox side, one there that's quite big actually, and then one there. So I think every time the crank has gone round at number 1 and number 4, it's just touched this plate very slightly, and it's starting to wear that down. Now eventually it would have worn that down enough that it wouldn't actually have touched anymore and the noise would have disappeared. But I want to get rid of this problem before it becomes any bigger than what it is now. So I can now, as you see, I've put washers there just to lower this down a little bit. So what I'll do now is put 2 washers on to lower it down just that little bit more, and then put it back up again. But I think where we can definitely see that that is where it's been touching, there and there, and then there as well. So I think that that is the noise that I've had from the engine. Looking at the engine itself, I can't actually see anything. Now I would imagine it's this going past. It could be the crank going past as well. I'm not really sure what it is that has been touching, but definitely something somewhere has been touching. But I'm going to give this a good clean down and see if I can find out where it's been touching. But it probably is the edge of this bolt head, or this bolt head, that's just been touching very slightly on that plate, which is what's causing the ticking noise, because it will be every time that passes, it ticks. So I definitely think this is what the problem is. So I've made this plate, cut it out with the plasma. Worked all right actually, it didn't go too bad. Drill the holes, they're a little bit off center here and there. That one's all right. But then I went to put the sump in, and I probably need to cut out quite a lot more from here to get the sump in. So I'm going to give up on this idea. I think it's going to be easy enough to get hold of one of them from a scrapyard, and it's probably not going to cost me a lot of money, and it's not worth it, to be honest. So I'm going to give up on this idea, and I'm going to continue with this. So I need to remove part of this here to be able to get the sump in, because as soon as this is in place, the sump's really hard to get in there. So that's what I'm going to put in there. What's that red thing? That's the switch for my washer pump. I don't know quite how it's got there, but I'm gonna have to get that out anyway. But I'm gonna have to take this bolt out anyway here to be able to remove this material here and flatten it a bit and get it to fit. So I'm gonna remove that now and that bolt, and I'll be able to get that switch out of there. And then I'll be able to put it back up again, but I think that's going in the bin. Well, that looks a lot nicer now it's gone through the powder coating oven. All bolted nice and neatly back up again. So we're going to put the last bit of the cradle back on there again, and then we can start filling the sump up with oil, start it up, and hopefully the noise will have disappeared. Just realised I forgot the exhaust. Oh crap. Right, so it's all back together again. New oil and a new oil filter. So let's just crank it up and see if the noise has disappeared. Fingers crossed. Well, that didn't make any difference. So I might have to recheck the valve clearances then and see if any of them are different. Oh well, that gives me something to do in the future then. Take the rocker cover off and check the valves again. I've already done it once, but I'll have to do it again now. Never mind. I have managed to sort the exhaust out. I've also managed to get now so that I can get the oil pan off and back on again. Repowder coated some plates and things like that. So I'm fairly happy with what I've done today, even if it didn't solve the problem, and it means I'll probably have to do something else to find the problem. So it's a couple of weeks now until Gustav gets here, so I've still got a couple more jobs left to do before he gets here. One of them is the breather for the engine, and I've also got my set of poly bushers that's arrived from England. They've took a long time to get here, but they are now here. So I'll be changing my poly bushers, and I'll also be changing the poly bushers on the Mark II that you've seen in a previous video. Don't forget to like my social media. I'll put a link up to it on the page here. If you've liked anything you've seen in this video, then please press that subscribe button. But for now, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.